Hello and good evening. Very warm welcome to our talk this evening here in our study group Ne Kafla. This is the Center of Spiritist Studies, Camille Flammarion here in Brussels. My name is Karen and I have the pleasure of reflecting with you today about the law of cause and effect and what this means for our lives, for actual circumstances that we live in. Before we start, I would like to introduce our group a bit and the activities that we can offer at this stage, given the situation that the pandemic causes. So we continue our public talks online, and we offer that on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. We have public talks in French every Monday at 7 p.m., in English every Tuesday at 8 p.m., and in Portuguese on Saturdays at 5 p.m. And then we have some of the activities already physically or in the group and our premises. But at the moment, all of them require an appointment, and we kindly ask you to really book one for either the fraternal conversation, if you need to talk to someone about anything, be it spiritual, any kind of situation that you're in your daily life, whatever you need to talk about, we are there to listen to you and try to help you the best we can. Then we offer the laying on of hands, the passing, where you can also book an appointment for, and our library and the bookshop are open as well. Not the way it was before, but also by appointment, and when you book your appointment, you will also receive the instructions of how to go about. And you find all this information also on our webpage, nekafla.be. You will find the ways to contact us, where I put the most common one here. So either by email, info@nekafla.be. You can contact us via our Facebook Messenger or on WhatsApp on 0492 859 981. So it will be a pleasure of seeing you back in the premises that way at the stage, and then we see how the situation develops and how we can move on. Okay, before we start with the talk of this evening, as usual, we start with an initial prayer, and I would like to invite you to join me. First of all, trying to calm down and to leave all the worries for a moment aside, and just try to elevate our thoughts, our vibrations. Being grateful for this moment where we can come together, reflecting a bit about the mechanisms that regulate our lives, and trying to learn together, finding ways to accept the situations that we are in and trying to find ways to improve them. With my sincerest gratitude to the mentors of our group and everyone in the group, I would like to ask for inspiration for our reflections of this evening. And also that all those who are in need of help, of support at this moment, may receive whatever is possible. So be it. Now, as I said, the topic of this evening is the law of cause and effect. And those of you who had a chance of attending last week's talk by Bispo will remember that he talked about the causes of our suffering. Why do we suffer, and where do we find the causes? Because often we see situations in life where we compare people with one another. We see people who seem to suffer for no reason, children who are already born with a difficult condition and only know suffering throughout their life, while others seem to get it all, seem to have to do no effort for anything, and don't care about anything, and still seem to be the lucky ones, right? And just for a short recap, as Bispo explained to us, he considered the origins of our difficulties and our sufferings, and explained to us that some of them, if depending on what the suffering is or the difficulties, really, if we look at our lives and looking back, we can find the causes there already, but some really cannot be explained if we only look at this one life as being this one existence and that's it. So we need to step a bit back and look at previous existences, as the Spiritist philosophy teaches us that we have more than just this one physical existence, more than this one incarnation, but what we learn is that we have this principle of reincarnation, and this is what our evolution is based on. And looking back at previous existences, if we could do it now that we are incarnate, it's difficult. Most of us don't remember anything. But if we could go back to the spiritual world, where we have a better overview of our whole history, we can see that the causes of the suffering, or much of the suffering in this life, lies in previous existences. And this is what I would like to go into today, because as Bispo explained us, this suffering is based on the law of cause and effect. And now, how do these mechanisms actually work when it comes to our evolution? And this is what I would like to reflect about today. And well, all of us know that every effect has a cause, right? And if we go remember our physics lessons, we may remember the law of action and reaction, where we learned that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, so this is Isaac Newton who taught this to us many centuries ago, and his laws of motion, and this is the third law, which is still valid today. After all these centuries, when we look from the physical point of view, we have a material body, some piece of matter. For every action in a physical way, we have an equal and opposite reaction. So this is very well known when we talk about matter. But now we're talking about people, we're talking about us, our lives. Is that the same then? Is for every action, is there, as that law says, is there an equal and opposite reaction, static? As if I do something, whatever it is there a set consequence for that with a set time frame that I will have to endure? Or is there anything that can influence this? Is there anything I can do about it? So this is what I would like to reflect about with you this evening. Well, one of the basics when we study Spiritism is we learn we are, in our essence, we are eternal or immortal spirits. And we learn that we reincarnate here for a certain period of time, but that actually our real home, our real life is the spiritual world. And when we talk about the law of cause and effect and try to understand it, it's important to remember and recall why we reincarnate. So what is the purpose of an incarnation? And this is what Allan Kardec asks the high order spirits in the Spirit book as well. So why do we incarnate? What's the purpose of an incarnation? And the spirits explain that we do incarnate in order to reach perfection. So the purpose of an incarnation is leading spirits to perfection. This is important to remember when we look at our life, when we look at sufferings, and at the question, what is just, or is that what I have to endure just? And what we also learned, that in order to reach this perfection, we really have to undergo all the vicissitudes of a corporeal existence. So we really learn both in the spiritual world and in the material world. But in order for us to really progress, to put in practice what we learn, we have to incarnate and try to progress here. And this is really the purpose. That's why we're here. There is a very interesting book, I'll just show it to you in a second, which is called Action and Reaction and talks about all these topics. It is written by the spirit of André Luiz through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, Francisco Cândido Xavier, which is part of a series of books which is called Life in the Spiritual World. It's really, if you don't know it yet, it is really worth starting to read it, because André Luiz, in all these books, he tells us what he encounters when he returns to the spiritual world. And he explains us so many details that help us to understand our own condition and the mechanics of what this evolution and this way of us trying to reach perfection is really based on and how it works. And in this book of Action and Reaction, he actually focuses on this question, the law of cause and effect and how it works. And at the beginning, we find an introduction by the spirit of Emmanuel, who summarizes a bit what the book is about and presents it to us as really being a book that shows us the importance of the physical existence as being a true blessing of divine mercy, an opportunity for us to adapt to the mechanism of infallible justice. So that is really something we should think about a bit, how really important that is for our evolution. And we may deduct from that okay, if it's really an opportunity for us to adapt to the mechanism of divine justice, if we like, then there must be really something more, something bigger behind it, that gives it a sense, and that gives a sense to the situations we are in, be they difficult, maybe have an easy life, which most of us don't, but it really helps us to understand that. And when we talk about a mechanism of infallible justice, we need to understand that mechanism a bit better. And this is also what Allan Kardec asked the higher order spirits in the Spirit's book. What is the natural law? What is this divine justice based on? When we talk about justice, there must be a law, right? So what is it? And the spirits explain that the natural law is the law of God. It is the only law that is truly necessary for human beings to be happy. It shows them what they should or should not do. And they only suffer misfortune when they depart from it. So that last part is very, very important for us to understand why we suffer. We only suffer misfortune when we depart from the natural law, from the divine law, the law of God. Sounds logical, but trying to apply it to our lives, trying to put it in practice, we all are aware it's not easy. But okay, when we talk about the natural law, that is so important, that shows us what we should do, what we should not do. I mean, that's what we often ask ourselves, what should I do? If this is so important that when we do not respect this law, we suffer, then we should all know this law, right? And well, when we talk about God being the supreme intelligence, all loving, all just, then that law must be known to anyone the same way, right? It's not that some people are aware of it and others are not, and suffer because they just don't know what to do. And of course, Allan Kardec, when he codified the Spirit's book and when he asked all the questions that he deemed adequate for us to understand the mechanisms of life, he also asked, so where do we find this law? Where is God's law written? And the answer is very short and very concise. It's in the conscience, in everyone's conscience, in your conscience, in my conscience, in everyone's. Yeah, and I think I don't have to explain it. We all are aware that basically we know when we're doing something right, when we're doing something good to someone, when we can help someone, and if we do, on the contrary, something that we should not do. We may base ourselves on the golden rule that we find in the gospel. that tells us, do unto others what you would want them to do unto you, which is basically the summary of God's law. And we have this in our conscience if you're honest. Sometimes we act according to it and knowing we're doing the right thing, and we feel really good, right? If we can do something good for someone, be of use, help someone. And at the contrary, we also know sometimes we just act in a way, either we don't think about what we're doing, or we do it and deep inside we know it's not right, but we still do it for whatever reason. That's our conscience calling and saying no, but we still do it. This is when we really deviate from the natural law, the divine law, and we are free to do it. This is another of the basics that we learn. We all have the free will to act as we please. We can do what we wish, but we will be responsible for the consequences. And this is what is very important to keep in mind when we talk about this law of cause and effect. We will be responsible for our for what we do, for all our actions. And when we go back for a second to the slide before and the question before, that we only suffer misfortune when we depart from God's law, we should also keep in mind why we then suffer. Why do we suffer this consequence? I mean, someone could just tell us, no, that was wrong, next time you do it right. In many philosophies and religion, we find a God that is kind of revengeful, that would make us suffer out of revenge. But if we are talking about a God that is all loving, all just, and that is the supreme intelligence, really that one intelligence, or you can call it universal intelligence, whatever name you would like to give it, that supreme and all loving intelligence will not be revengeful. That's an attribute of us when we're not very developed yet, but not of a supreme intelligence. If our aim is to reach perfection, and if we learn this through the many incarnations, then the sufferings which are a consequence of our, negative actions, they have a purpose of leading us to progress, of teaching us something. It may be very painful, but sometimes that's the way we learn. So this is important for us to keep in mind. The purpose of this suffering, and all suffering, is progress and not revenge. When we come again to the book of Action and Reaction, one thing that we learn about life is that life, as many institutions here on earth, life has its accounting system to express the mechanism of indisputable justice. Each one will be accountable for their respective credits and debits. So we really have our current account and life's accounting system where all our credits, because we're not that bad, we don't do anything good, right? Okay, so we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves, and also acknowledge our credits. But there we find our credits, all our positive actions that we have, and our debits kind of being put in front of us, and bringing this into the context of reincarnation. We will find in this book the information that no one can move ahead without clearing the debts they contracted. How can we walk the path of the angels with our feet shackled to the earth, where humans accuse us of wrongdoings, and thereby immersing our memory in the darkness? The divine law is founded on inexorable justice and applies equally to everybody. So again, this picture of us trying to improve ourselves, to get a little bit closer to that perfection that eventually we will reach. We can't really do that if we harmed someone and that person is still accusing us, and we may have learned many positive things and done a lot of good things, but if you haven't fixed our debts, we will not be able to move ahead. And there's one of the basics books, we know that the Spiritist teachings are well summarized or explained in 5 basic books, the Spirit's book being one of them. The 4th of these 5 books is the book Heaven and Hell, which is the divine justice according to Spiritism, which in its first part explains a bit what this divine justice is based on. And then the second part is also very interesting. You find examples of spirits, of suffering spirits, of spirits who have already gone through certain progress, happy spirits, where we learn really what was their last incarnation like and what is their state in the spiritual world now. And in some cases, we also learn a bit about their future prospects for further incarnations. So how will they move ahead? So it's really, really interesting. And in chapter 7, there's one part which is called the Panel Code of Future Life, which actually deals with this law of action and reaction, and which is quite comprehensive. I only summarized a bit of what we learned there, but it's really, really worth studying it because it's very detailed, and going through these very logical explanations, we will understand a bit better our current situation. Well, one very important point is complete happiness, which is very, very difficult to find here at our stage. Complete happiness inherent to perfection. So the complete purification of the spirit. Then, only then, we will be absolutely happy. As long as we still have imperfections, we will not be happy yet. Because as Allan Kardec explains us, every imperfection is at the same time a cause of suffering. Just as every acquired quality is a source of blessedness and the attenuation of suffering. And when we read this panel code and everything that is written in this book, it's not, you should remember, this is not a theory that Allan Kardec, being an incarnate person, wrote down, but this is based really on observation and based by reports by spirits who communicated through the mediumship of various persons what this panel code is based on. So as long as we still have imperfections, these are causes of sufferings, and at the same time, every quality is a source of blessedness. So it's not only the imperfections that cause us to suffer, but we also improve our own situation through the positive qualities that we acquire and the positive deeds. This is something that we learn further down in this code. And they also attenuate our suffering, which is very important because that already leads us to the point is the law of cause and effect. That I do something wrong, I harm someone. Let's say someone killed someone in a past life. Is there a set time of suffering for that, and a static suffering? To learn it here, know that it all depends on the whole picture. It will depend on our intentions. It will depend on what else we do. Is this our habit, or do we usually try to do our best and try to make up for what we did wrong? So every positive act, every positive quality helps actually to mitigate our suffering. This is very important to keep in mind, and if we have time, I can explain this as an example at the end. So it is really worth, no matter what situation we are in, to understand, okay, we are suffering because of some imperfection. And that type of imperfection is actually nothing that can be so difficult or something that we would never understand. The spirits also explain to us that the type of suffering that we're going through from that type, we can deduct actually what we did wrong in the past. So what we suffer from, and if we also look at our tendencies of our imperfections, be it selfishness, be it pride, we may get an idea of what was actually the cause of our difficult situation at the moment if you are in such a situation. When we are suffering, it's really important to understand there's nothing that we have to endure and wait for it to go over, no matter what, but just trying to remember, okay, there is this divine law. I'm here in order to try and improve myself, and I have to take every chance I have in order to do something positive, and that doesn't have to be a huge project, but any small act of kindness, any positive thought, any hand I can give someone, any good I can do will help me actually to overcome the difficult situation I'm in, to mitigate a bit the severeness of the suffering, and also to, well, as I said, the source of blessedness, to be in a position where also something positive happens to us, because we're not suffering all the time, or most of us. And also we find that as progress is a law, every one of us has the potential to acquire the good that we lack. So we're all treated in the same way. We have all been created the same way. We all have the same objective to reach. And everyone has this opportunity. No matter how many times we fail, we will always get a new chance to learn, because progress is a law. And just continuing a bit in this panel code, this is also important. The duration of the punishment depends on how much the guilty spirit improves itself. There's no set amount of time for a condemnation, as it says here. Because what God requires for the end of our suffering is a serious, effective improvement and an authentic return to the good. Going back to the question, what is the purpose of our suffering? It's not revenge, it is progress. And I find this actually very, very consoling, because it shows that we actually can do something about our situation. In some cases, we just see people suffering until the very end of their lives. And sometimes you just can't do anything about it, but maybe we can, not maybe, we can mitigate the suffering a bit by trying to improve ourselves and return to good. So this is something that can help us to look at life and look at our sufferings as a chance for us to improve, to get rid of an imperfection and try to move on, get a little bit closer to our goal of reaching perfection, and also to understanding we have a role to play in order to try and make it as well less severe as possible. And one very important point as well is when we harm someone and we come to the point that we repent, be it in spiritual world after that last incarnation. Repentance is the first step towards regeneration, but it's not enough. Expiation and reparation are still required. And this is also very, very important to understand. Okay, I repent, and this is also what happens when we're here, right? We do something wrong to someone, we repent, and we understand, okay, we have to fix it. And in order for us to learn that we do not, just take an example of someone who has the habit of humiliating people. So maybe in the next incarnation, we have to be born into a situation where we are the ones who are being humiliated in a form of expiations. So really for us to learn and to internalize that this is something that we just can't do. And So any situation, any suffering situation we're in, maybe an expiation or an opportunity to repair something that we have done wrong before. And then this is also based on, we find this both in the Spirit's book, we find it, in the Spirit's book, that when we are back in the spiritual world and we have the bigger picture, we look back at our situation, we understand what we did wrong, we do repent, we actually start planning our next incarnation based on that, understanding what we still need to learn, and that's the moment when we ask for certain situations that make us suffer, because this is where we say, okay, only through this and that situation I will learn something. We ask for a situation where we can meet again someone that we may have harmed and try to fix what we have done wrong. And well, when we incarnate, this is when we encounter situations where we have difficulties with some people. Well, we all know there are people that we have a certain affinity with, and then there are others that challenge us, that where we have to really try and be patient and try to establish a relationship that is more or less harmonious. But it is important for us to understand that often these people are the ones that, when we live close together with them, if we are in a situation where we work together, these are those situations where we get a chance of repairing something or to reconcile with someone. And this is also what we learn in the book of Action and Reaction. Very often we will have the fortune, and this is really an instructor in an institution in the spiritual world, where André Luiz, the spirit who writes this book, studies the situation of cause and effect, and he tells them, we will have, in the next incarnation, we will have the fortune to meet up with our old enemies under the wheel of temporary forgetfulness, thereby facilitating the precious opportunity to reconcile. There's a lot of important information in there. So we have the fortune of meeting up with our old enemies, because then we can have a new, press the restart button and try to, this time, make it better and try to reconcile. And this is also very important, that we do forget what happened in the past. Usually we do. Most of us don't remember. And we might ask, well, wouldn't it be easier for us to remember, and then it would be easier to accept our sufferings? Just imagine we would remember if we harmed someone really badly in the past and meet them again. Maybe for that person it wouldn't be easy to forgive us. For us it would be humiliating at some stage. The spirits explain this in the Spirit's book. We can trust that if we do not remember our past incarnations, and there's a reason for that. And this is actually a positive one. We get this new chance, a blank sheet of paper where we can meet again, meet in the same family, which often happens, be a colleague, a friend, but we very often get this opportunity of meeting up with our old enemies and trying to turn them into friends, or at least into companions that we can live with without trying to harm one another. And this is really, what I meant before, those people who are really difficult for us to live with or to work with, or in whatever situation it might be. These are the ones where we really have to go this extra mile, where we have to put this extra effort in place in order to at least establish a peaceful relationship and try to fix this this old status of enemy into something positive, and really take this chance. I know that very often it is not easy, and the fact that we study the Spiritist teachings doesn't mean that once we read it, we apply it 100%. No, we fail, and if we fail, what can we do? in order to avoid that, again, we will suffer from it. You find this again in the penal code of the future life. If, again, we harmed someone, the only way of avoiding that we will suffer from it, or that at least to try to mitigate the future consequences of this wrong, is to free ourselves from it as much as possible in this life by repairing it, so that we don't have to painfully repair it later on. So it is normal, we are still at a condition where we fail a lot. If we have done so towards someone else, let's be honest to ourselves and recognize this and really try to ask for forgiveness, try to fix that debt, do whatever we can do in order to make peace with those persons. And we should really take this chance, because as the spirits had explained, the longer the reparation for a wrong is postponed, we can do it, the more painful and harsh its consequences will be in the future. For every, as we learned before, every imperfection is a cause of suffering, and we can try to postpone this as long as we like, but we will suffer from it. So this is really important for us to understand. We need to be honest to ourselves, and also understand the importance of trying to get to know ourselves. What are our imperfections? What are the challenging situations? And where can I improve now? What can I do in order to kind of turn one imperfection into a positive quality? And where especially can I avoid future suffering because I made someone else suffer? Try to fix it now, or let's try to fix it now. So me giving you a lesson in it, I have to learn from it. So this is basically what I would like to talk about. For time's sake, I will just very much simplify the example that I wanted to give you. It's about a man who is now incarnate in Brazil. He's called Adelino Correia. It's not a man I would know, but this is also part of the book Action and Reaction, a case that André Luiz tells us. And this man, in his past incarnation, he had actually killed his own father because he had fallen in love with the young wife of his father. And this is how he thought he would be happy with his father's wife. And he killed him with the help of 2 other people. So making it short, in the spiritual world, and already in that former incarnation, he suffered a lot because his father tried to kind of put revenge on him. And after a long suffering, after being back in the spiritual world, a long suffering, he succeeded in getting the chance of a new incarnation. He incarnated in a very simple situation. His wife left him very early, and he left this man, Adelino Correia, together with their young daughter. So he is living alone with this daughter. Why? Because in his former incarnation, he had not respected his father's wife, or this family, these family relations, and he was not in a position to be happy with his own wife now in his new incarnation. He's living with his young daughter, and this young daughter is actually his former father's wife, who now gets a new chance of reincarnating again and learning with Adelino to try to adjust to the divine laws. And he is actually a man who in this incarnation is really doing everything he can in order to help people. He's giving his last cent in order to help someone else who's suffering. And whenever someone needs something, he's the one who helps. And he has been doing this for all his life. And by doing all these good deeds and helping people, he acquired so many positive credits on life's balance or accounting system, that he step by step actually succeeds to get more chances to fix his old debts more quickly. So later on, he will be able to adopt 2 children who are orphans. And these 2 children are actually the 2 men who had helped him in a former life to kill his father. And continuing his life, so he has his 3 children that he takes care of, and continuing his positive way of being, helping people. Later on, he also succeeds in getting the chance of receiving his former father that he killed as one more son, another orphan that was actually placed in front of his doorstep. Someone just left this baby there. And he will have the chance to care for all these children, to give them a new chance, and to reconcile with all of them, and try to make prepare a better future from that step on. And it's a very beautiful story. Only for that story, it's worth reading this book, which really shows that we can influence our fate. It's not set in stone, but we can, by our acts, prepare a more positive future and really mitigate our suffering and the difficult situations. And this is basically the main message that I wanted to pass. It's a topic that you can reflect about a lot, and it's difficult to make justice to all these questions in a short time. But I would like to close with this sentence that I like a lot by the spirit of Joanna de Angelis, who explains to us that love is always the great turning point in life, no matter what situation we are in. And love, meaning this fraternal love, where we really understand that the others are our equals, our brothers and sisters, and that we all need to learn to love one another. If we try and take this step and try to do the best we can, try to treat the others the way we want to be treated, this is the best we can do in order to prepare a better future for ourselves. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you very much for your patience. And before we close, I'd like to invite you for our final prayer. Almighty Father, we'd like to thank you for this opportunity of studying together. We'd like to thank you for all the logical explanations that we find in the Spirit's teachings that really explain us why we suffer and what we can do in order to improve our own situation. But who also teach us that sometimes we can do our best, but if our suffering continues, we will need to accept it, understanding that it is for our own progress, even though at the moment we may not be in a position to understand the full picture. But maybe always keep this hope in our hearts that we can prepare a better future for ourselves, maybe especially at these challenging times of transition here on our planet. Remember these teachings, that we are only here for one incarnation, that anything that happens to us has a reason to be. And that returning to the spiritual world, we will understand better why we have been facing certain situations. And maybe also have understand that this is only one of all the many, many incarnations that we still have ahead of us. And that we are preparing our own future by what we're doing today. May all those who are in difficult situations receive all the help possible. And may we all have a good week. So be it. So thanks very much, and next Tuesday there will be a new talk at 8 p.m. So please join us. Thank you, take care.